Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and we are now at the 2nd of June, so I do believe this is officially 1 month of these. So happy anniversary to this live stream, I guess. I can't believe I've done 30 or maybe even 31 of these so far. It's kind of interesting. Good morning, Sam. Just mentioning here that I have, this has literally been the whole month of doing these. So interesting. Happy anniversary to me, I guess. And May has been a rather interesting and somewhat tumultuous month, in spite of the fact that most of the tumult, well, I guess April was a tumultuous month too. I mean, let's be real. But I think, June, we have an interesting, yes, thank you. Yay. Happy anniversary to this. So I have, there's an interesting astrological aspect that's coming up this week, and that is the Jupiter and Pluto. I'm trying to remember if they're trine or if they're conjunct. There's an aspect between them that I think, what is it? Was it Storm? I think they say Storm Sessavani. Is that to say the last name? I could be saying his name wrong. On Twitter, who had said something like, "This is like, the what is it? The right Tinder swipe." Of the planets, something to that effect. I don't use Tinder, so I can't remember which is left and which is right. But in any case, it was the idea that this was like a really, really uniquely good energy this week for doing stuff. The only difference is that with this particular energy that you actually do have to do stuff. So it's not a case of, in other words, if there's something you want to manifest this week, get your plans together, put it together, start doing things to manifest and put it in motion. And the energy is very good this week for promoting any new projects that you want to do. So that is going to inform today's topic. I did have an interesting thing, though. Last few days, when I've been on social media, and actually even over the last couple of weeks, I have known, at least 3 or 4 different people who have gone down to South Jersey, Robbinsville, to visit the, I think it's the Sri Swaminarayan Mandir. That's the one. It's called BAPS. And it's this big, beautiful temple. It's fairly new. I know that there was an article about it in one of the local New Jersey online magazines or whatever it was. And somebody had pointed it out to me. I feel like it was one of my friends had pointed it out to me like a few months ago. And I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. Of course, South Jersey is quite far from me, and I don't really drive, so I'd have to go with somebody to be able to go see the temple. But like 4 people this week, including some of my really close friends, just messaged me, and they're like, hey, look where I was. And they you can only take pictures of the outside. Obviously, you can't take pictures inside the temple. But then one of my cousins went too, and this is a cousin who I'm a Facebook friend of hers, but she's not somebody who I've probably seen in more than 20 years. And she posted pictures of herself at this temple. And I'm like, and then another person posted today who I've only met, another librarian who I'd met through another mutual librarian colleague friend. And I was just like, everybody's going to this temple. Like, what is it about this particular temple? So I don't know. I feel almost like it's a sign that I need to get down and see that temple. Because I'm trying to remember who the chief deity is of that mandir, because we have one not far from where I live called the Sri Venkateshwara temple, and that Balaji is or Sri Venkateshwara, who is known as Balaji, is the chief deity. I mean, obviously, most Hindu temples have a lot of different deities. They all have some kind of aspect of Devi in there. They all will have probably a Shiva lingam in there at the very least. And usually a Ganapati, Ganesha, there's going to be a Ganesha statue. But then, of course, there's the main murti or image that you have in the mandir. And the murti, now what's interesting about murti, just as sort of a little side note here, and a murti is just the Hindu word for, the Sanskrit word for statue. Okay, it's basically a statue, but it's a very special kind. If you go into a temple, you'll see that they're often made out of black stone, which I think is just very interesting from a divine feminine standpoint, because the word, certainly the word in Near Eastern kind of Arabic parlance for black stone is Kaaba. And if you think about if anybody is Muslim, and if you go to Mecca to see the Kaaba, it's Kaaba. The word Kibali, the goddess Kibali, comes from the word for black stone. They're all root words that connect to the idea of a black stone, because the idea of a black stone is something that's very intensely sacred. But it's carved in a specific way, and all of the temples that I've been to, the main murti or image is always made with this black stone. And the facial carvings will always be very similar. They'll either be more, well, even the masculine and feminine, it's very hard. You can't always tell the difference between the two. The faces are sometimes very similarly carved. Maybe just the nature of carving that kind of stone. But there is there's the establishment of prana, or the establishment of life in the murti, and that makes it different from, say, walking into a church and seeing statues of saints, for example, or to see Jesus on a crucifix. Those are symbols, those are icons, those are symbols that are meant to point your mind and point your attention to something beyond the mundane or the earthly life. The murti, the ceremony that's done by what they would be the pandits, or the ones who have the official capacity. The pujaris are the ones who do the worship, and the ones who are officially able to, whether it be the actual guru connected with the temple or the swami, they are the ones who do the ceremony of establishing life in the actual object. So there is an essence of the deity, because the deity, remember, in Hinduism is not transcended. Deities are immanent. They're here. They're aspects of things that are going on here. And there's not necessarily that distinction between inside and outside. Remember, that's maya, that's illusion. So the murti itself is a special ceremony to engage with, to have prana, to have a certain element of life, which is why once you have a statue like that, and you establish life in it, you must do puja to that statue every single day. This is why they tell people who have a temple at home, like I have a mini temple, like, well, not really a temple, a little altar with a Shiva Nataraj, and I have Kali, and I have Ganesha, and who else is over there? And yes, I have Shiva Lingam there as well. So, and then some other images of Devi, of Shiraje Rajeshwari. So I have a little mini altar over in my room here. But you would never ever establish life in any of those images, because otherwise I have to do puja. It would be very, very bad if you don't do puja every day to those images, because it's almost like taking someone into your house and then not feeding them. Saying, "Hi, you can live here, but you can starve to death." You have to feed the energy there. Or it's very, very bad. So yeah, so puja is interesting in that way. So when you walk into a temple and people say, well, it has this particular aura to it, I was like, yes, because the deities are actually, in a certain sense, the deities are already everywhere. The whole idea that the guru was trying to teach you is that you in fact are Shiva, or you in fact are Shakti, like you in fact are the deity, and and everything is the deity. It's not, there's no separation there, but. For the purposes of attention and focusing our attention. This is why we have images. Images aren't there. I know people think of some images as fetish objects, and you can take a scripture and think of it as a fetish object too. The way that people can sometimes, for instance, fetishize the Bible, or the words of a particular scripture, and say, the way people wave a Bible around like it's going to, cast out all the evil spirits and stuff. That's fetishizing an object, really. It's not so much about the object. It's about what the object points to. But when you're in a temple and you have a murti like that, it's telling you about it's the embodiment of that particular deity in this form, in this usually this black stone kind of form. And of course, the deity is dressed appropriately according to what the ritual is. And the rituals are very, very powerful. And when people, Westerners in particular, those of you just joining me, I was just talking about how. All these people had gone to visit this one, was it the Shri, I'm trying to get the words right in my head, Swaminarayan Temple, I think is what it's called. I'm not sure if I have the name exactly right. If I have it in front of me, I can usually say it pretty well, which is in Robbinsville, New Jersey. But I've seen 4 people, including people I know who have, as far as I know, have no even mild interest in going to a place like that. But I've seen at least 4 different sets of photos from people who I know quite well, actually, who have gone. And I'm like, why is everybody going? I feel like there's a sign that I need to go there. So anyway, I'm just talking about the way that a murti works, the way that you have, the way that the life is established in these murtis, in these particular rituals. And it is a rather intense experience. So to join into that and to join into the prasadam, which is where you, at the end of the ritual, the pujari will give you, usually it could be something, it could be a sweet, it could be rice, it could be a lot of different things. People offer all kinds of things too towards prasadam. So whatever it is, they will give out a little bit of it to the people who have been around watching and participating in the ritual. And you can participate as well more directly. They will ask you, what your name is, what your ancestral name is, your family name. There's different names that you normally do. Now, of course, if you're a white person going in there, you don't have that kind of lineage or background. You don't belong to a caste. So you're not going to be able to do that. A lot of times they'll just ask your first and last name, and then they say, okay, and that's good enough. Some of them will just, in place of certain names, they'll just say, just say Shiva instead. So it all depends. I've done it different ways. I've had sponsorships at temples, and then I've actually been there participating. So, but this idea of the establishment of life, there's a big difference between the way we conceive of religion in the Western world and the way it's conceived of in the East, because again, deity is immanent. In the West, we tend to think of God as somebody out there, transcendent, somebody. This earth was corrupted by the original sin of Adam and Eve or whatever, and then, so Yahweh's taken off and is now up in the clouds or out in the universe somewhere and not here. And so, and where we are is imperfect and needs to be fixed and all of that kind of stuff. Eastern view is quite different, because it basically says that, the separateness that we feel and the suffering and the sorrow is actually illusory. It's the trick of the goddess Maya. But it's not a matter of trying to get rid of Maya. It's a matter of recognizing that this trick is here for you to participate in. It's like a game that we play in kind of this wondrous creation that we have and in the space because the universe is considered to be a dream of Vishnu, who they said the lotus of the universe comes out of his navel, and Brahma comes out of that, the creator god. And the universe is created. That's the dream of Vishnu. And then when that universe ends, the lotus closes, it goes back, Brahma goes back, and then a new one comes again. So in other words, there's thousands of universes that come and go in this particular way of thinking. So you also won't see very apocalyptic thinking in Hinduism either. You will see this idea that that if there's going to be an end, like you will hear about different avatars of Vishnu coming to end a certain yuga, like we hear about Kalika coming to end the Kali Yuga, that this is going to be an avatar of Vishnu that's going to come in and there's going to be a destruction of this universe. But as the Swamis have said that I've spoken to, they said, yeah, well, this universe will end and then a new one will start, new golden age will start. So we start again. So, really there's this whole thing about even when something is destroyed, yes, it's the end of one thing, but it's the beginning of another thing. So another cycle begins. So so very, very interesting difference there. And one of the things I always have to highlight when I teach religion to my students is the idea that we're not talking about the same thing. There was a documentary I had seen when I was an undergraduate in religious studies that had said, like 300 million gods. Like, it was what was his name? Ron? Oh God, he had a really. I just remember he had really bad ties that he wore on his thing. Ron. Oh God, I can't remember his last name now. But anyway, it was the. I'm trying to remember the name of the series, but it was one that our religion professor had us watch. And he was, but that it was called 300 Million Gods. And people say, well, how can you have 300 million? How can you keep track of all those gods? How can you worship all of those gods? And it's like, well, because they're not, we all think of each of those gods as somehow ultimate. And they're not. They're not like these, they're sort of, they're not, I find that the Hindu gods tend to represent more, imagine people conceive of them differently. They're different qualities, really. They're sort of different qualities of existence. I don't know how else to explain it. Sometimes I think of them, one of the ways the mind can conceive of it is the idea that in some ways they may have to do with, they may be tied in very strongly to our psychology, because they have to do with the different traits that we have. And that's why I find Hindu mythology so interesting, because in Hindu myth, you will have, for example, Shiva, who is considered to be, I mean, Shiva is the destroyer, but he also creates the world with Shakti, right? He's a creator and a destroyer at the same time. But you will see Shiva granting a boon, say, to a figure that will be described as an Ashura or as a demon. Like a demon will do spiritual austerities and gain a favor, but then they often use that favor to gain power over the world or something like that, or to defeat a particular god or something like that. Like it's a matter of how they use the boon that they have. And so, in Western thinking, you would say, well, why would you do that? Why would you go along and work with a demon? But the thing is that the word Ashura does not mean demon in the same way. I mean, even really the word demon here comes from daemon, which is an intermediary spirit. So in terms of the original kind of Greek word, a daemon is, there's kakodemon and there's agathodemon. There's the Greeks talked about good and evil intermediaries, or ones that are that bring the ones that bring good and good news, and the ones that are inauspicious and maybe bring disease and other things like that. But they're intermediaries between the deities and humans is the way that they were thought of them. And later on, demon just became anything that was under the earth. So yeah. So anyway, so we have this idea. But the idea of demon in Hinduism, is not the same. It's the idea of more of a being that is more materially focused, I guess, and more focused on things more easily corrupted by power, by greed, by things like that. Like a being that represents those qualities, addiction, things like that are often represented by the Ashuras. The Devas tend to represent the more auspicious qualities, which is why you might have what they call an Ishta Devata. You'll have a chosen deity, and you do puja to that deity because the idea is that deity embodies the qualities that you want to develop in yourself. So, for example, I know a lot of Hindus who have a little altar to Hanuman, who is the monkey god, who is definitely associated with qualities of like loyalty and steadfastness and things like that. So the idea is that that by doing puja to Hanuman, that you can awaken these qualities in yourself, and that's the way it goes. So the interplays in the Hindu epics. It's interesting because when you translate the names of the deities and the Ashuras and things, when you read the English translations, okay, it becomes a whole interesting thing because it literally looks like a psychodrama. The goddess Durga battling passion and anger, battling the demon of addiction, battling the Mahisasura, the great egoic demon who is about taking over the world and pushing any kind of thought of the gods out, like keeping the gods subject. So the Devi comes in, the feminine comes in to try to to do battle with that ego. Okay, so and in this particular parlance, a lot of people are afraid of goddess Kali, but Kali actually represents certainly within that epic. I think Kali and a deity related to her, but is not, whether it's exactly her or not, is Chamunda. In one of the epics, Durga refers to Kali as Chamunda, but Chamunda is probably a deity older than Kali. But in any case, this is a deity who's like an emaciated woman who just starts grabbing things and swallowing them. She devours things. She devours the armies of passion and anger. And if you think about the symbolism of that, this is this goddess who comes in and the thing is, she still remains emaciated. She never, her stomach never fills. She just keeps going and going, and she just keeps devouring this. So the idea is that these are beings that, as terrifying as they are, they bring clarity. They get rid of our extreme emotions. They calm us. They bring us peace. Okay, so they're not. So people who look at them and see, they've got swords and scimitars and they've got skulls around their neck and they're dripping blood, they think, oh my God, this is some horrible demonic being. It's like, no, they're there to, they represent this force that is there to challenge the aspects of the ego that get us tied up in the mind, that make us suffer. So interesting thing. Wow. This wasn't what I intended to talk about today, but just interesting that I've kind of gone there. The thing that I was really going to talk about today, which came into my mind here, was the energy of was the idea of risk. Okay, because the energy we have here is of the Fool card. Now, the Fool in this particular iteration, you see he's kind of standing on the edge of a cliff, kind of like a goat would. If you've ever been to any mountainous region where there are goats, I remember being, I think it was on Sleeve League in Ireland. and just watching the goats and the sheep, and they look like they're literally like gravity is not a thing. Like they almost look like they're sideways. They're standing in there, and they're somehow those hooves are able to grab onto the rock like that. So that's what it kind of reminds me of when I look at this guy. But it's almost like he's ready to. He's walking very foolishly. Like he could fall in. And this is something. Actually, looking at an image like this just kind of gives me agita because I'm afraid of heights. But usually, in the more in some of the traditional images, he's also shown with a dog, and the dog is almost there to try to either pull him back from going too far into the abyss, or is just sort of there as his accompanying. I guess just his companion. And the thing is, this companion dog. When you see a dog. Dogs tend to be very much associated with what we think of as underworld journeys. They have to do with the way in which we, when we pass through an area of what we might think of as a darkness or as a trial or as a test or as an ordeal. It's like we think of Anubis in Egyptian mythology. It was really a jackal, but you have these idea of these dog beings or dog figures that end up being guides. Hecate in Greek mythology, it has her pack of hounds with her. The idea is that this is, and in Aztec mythology, actually, the underworld there, the soul going through the different ordeals of the underworld is eventually guided through by a dog that takes them to eventually what their final stages. And it takes a long time in Aztec. It could take years for your ancestor to reach the abode of the dead. But there's always this idea of the dog. And as providing that that guidance in some way. So risk is it's something, we often talk about reasonable risks versus unreasonable risks. And I just feel like with this energy, which I was talking about at the beginning, if you've joined me late, was the idea of Jupiter and Pluto, the kind of aspects that they have right now together. And I'm just not remembering this morning whether it's a trine, whether or not it's a conjunction, or sextile. It's one of those auspicious aspects between the two of them. And whatever it is, it's like such a harmonious energy between Pluto, which allows us to dig up what's in shadow and what allows us to release the past, and Jupiter, which is a planet of expansion and abundance. And this particular aspect allows us to kind of move past our limitations and to really manifest and move in the direction that we want. But of course, with a lot of these, even with people who have a grand trine in their chart, which is where you have this, usually it's an aspect between one element. So you might have a grand fire trine. So there may be, you may have planets in all the houses that are connected to fire. So that would be Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. I have one of those in my chart. Some people have grand earth trines, grand air trines, grand water trines, whatever it is. When you have that kind of an aspect, it's a very helpful aspect, but it doesn't mean that you automatically, it's just like, okay, well, you don't have to try or put any effort. I mean, there is definitely a sense that you are working towards something, but whatever it is you're actively trying to manifest with this kind of energy has a good shot of becoming something, because you have the broader picture. The universe is supporting whatever it is that you're doing. So this is a time I think that a lot of people are thinking about taking risks and doing things that are new, or maybe just it's the auspicious time to actually do that. But risk is interesting. It's sort of, if you think about it in the sense of walking into water. Okay, now again, depending on how comfortable you are. If you're a great swimmer, you might jump into the ocean or whatever and just be able to swim and be good with it. If you're not as strong of a swimmer, you might be a person who kind of walks along the edge of the water, right? And maybe if it's low tide, you might sort of ease your way in. That said, even the strongest swimmer, if you have a rip tide or if you have some kind of a current like that, that's very, very dangerous. You could still drown with that kind of a current. But people have different comfort levels with water. And then plus the fact that if you walk into an ocean, you also have all the stuff that's on the floor. There's crabs. Occasionally you'll run into little sharks. You run into different things. I mean, there's living stuff in the water. So when you get in and you start swimming, you may encounter that stuff. And depending on how you feel about encountering that stuff, I personally don't like going in the ocean and stepping on like a crab or something like that, because, that's not, it's very unpleasant. Or jellyfish. I was terrified by jellyfish from the time I was a child. I remember being on the beach in, God, this was probably back in like 1979. It was a long time ago, but I actually have a memory of it. And there was a girl I was playing with on the beach. We had just, I don't know who she was. Like, their family was camped out next to our family, and we just started like playing together, building sandcastles, whatever it is we were doing. And I noticed that she had this really terrifying looking like thing on her leg. And I said, "What happened to you?" And she said, "Oh, that's a jellyfish sting." And she's like, "Yeah, I got in there and, I got stung by a jellyfish." And I was just thinking, okay, I don't ever want to be stung by a jellyfish. It literally just freaked me out so badly that I actually have almost a horror of that. So, especially if I go down by the water in like August or something like that, and I look, you can see there's like a ton of them in there. I'm like, yeah, no, I want to stay away from those. I just have a thing about it. So I use the ocean as a metaphor here because the ocean is a good metaphor for the great kind of force of consciousness. We often talk ourselves as being a wave in the ocean. And when we try to do things individually, we're better off trying to work with the energy of the whole ocean behind us rather than trying to just us as an individual wave, which has some power and some effect, but not the same as if we sort of join forces with the collective or the bigger picture, whether that means working with others, whether that means yielding to whatever is going on in terms of obstacles or whatever is going. There's a flow that goes on there. And so when one takes a risk, the question is how comfortable are you jumping into that ocean, so to speak, and going with whatever happens there. Dealing with the big waves when they come, being able to kind of to go over them, and what are you able to do when you maybe are in deeper waters? Like how do you navigate that? So it's and again, so the idea of risk is different for different people. Not everybody feels like they want to. Like what I might think of as a risk and what you might think of a risk might be entirely different. If you're more, if you're more grounded and practical in the way that you are, like say if you're an earth sign, you might be somebody who's more like, your idea of a risk might be, trying to, basically not having a plan or like I'm doing this thing right now where I'm saying, okay, I'm seeing where the money's going to come from every month and I don't have a regular paycheck. That for me is a huge risk because for me, I'm very much about planning and knowing where everything comes from. For other people, they might just be kind of like, I'm just going to walk away from my house and apartment and everything and just live on the road and busk and do this and, just see what happens. Some people are comfortable with that level of risk and that level of letting go. Not suggesting that that's something everybody needs to do. But, you know what I mean? There's different people who can... there are in situations where you think, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to solve that? They're like, it'll get solved. And I have an admiration for people who can do that because somehow they just, they just show up in different places and at different times and things just happen. And probably the reality is that might happen for a lot of people who just open themselves up to it and don't try to control the process. But risk is something that I feel like this is a time when people need to think about what kind of risks they're going to take. If somebody wants to start a business, say, and they don't want to take financial risks, sometimes it's a case of, well, you need to take the financial risk in order. It's the idea of spend money to make money, that kind of a thing. We need to sometimes to take that kind of a risk. I do have some friends who I think that have pretty much all the resources that they need, but they're thinking like, well, but I don't want anything that's going to create any debt for me. And it's like, well, that means you're assuming that you are going to fail, that you're going to put that money out and you're not going to get it back. Risk, I think, requires a certain amount of optimism that what you're doing. I mean, if we follow the kind of Zen way of thinking, then you shouldn't necessarily be focused on the outcome. But certainly, like if you're going to try to get somebody to invest in what you're doing, you do have to be somewhat focused on the outcome because they want to see your outcome assessment. But I think a lot of times we need to kind of just be in it for doing it and not necessarily where we're going to get to. And that's hard to say, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to see what happens. And if I get what I need, great. If I don't, great. And that's a really hard place to be. I think in the end, we kind of figure that we're going to get what we need. So let's see what our reading says for today, because we're already at 7. Okay, our central card for today is the Lovers. Okay, so the Lovers. Now in this deck, Lovers really seems to be more genuinely about love. And, but if we look at it more traditionally, this can have to do with choices that we have to make. Okay. I feel like this also in this case has to do with partnerships though, with people coming together, and this is, and coming together in a way that is authentic, not in a way that is about, I don't know, not utilitarian, I guess, not in the way that we sometimes come together with people to, we forge alliances, we network, right, with people, or you have a friendship that you think is going to be useful to you in some way. To me, that's not, I mean, you can become real friends with somebody in that kind of a situation, but, that's why you always got to be careful of, like, the salesperson who makes friends with you and stuff. A lot of times they're doing it predicated on the idea that there's going to be something in return. This kind of love is more the idea that, no, it's given freely and there's not an expectation of anything in return. At least not in terms of, like, in other words, if you love somebody, if somebody needs something, you'll do it for them. And, at some point that person probably will repay you, especially if that love is returned in kind, or just having the relationship is enough. So whether this has to do with an actual love relationship or whether really in the context of a psychological reading, I would say this is more about learning to get in the space of love and learning to get in the space of reaching out to others, not so much about necessarily, like I was saying with the risk thing, not so much about making money, but more about just because we care about people, right? And the inner feeling, again, we had this card yesterday. We had the flowering card. This is the Queen of Pentacles. So yeah, there's definitely this sense here, I think, for people that stuff is growing, stuff is happening. And so this flowering is, we're growing into the people that we need to be. Like, something is happening. And, the ground has been prepared properly. The thing is growing the way it wants to. It's just a lot of times we have to wait. And the external feeling of which we're aware here is control. And again, this is the King of Clouds energy, or King of Swords, if you prefer. And yeah, this energy of control, we can't control the flowering. That's the frustrating thing, because when we put something out there, we want to know the result of it before it's happened. Okay, so I think this is why it's saying you need to go at something from the perspective of love, or from the perspective of the heart, if you will. If you don't necessarily want to think about it in relation, though, I think everything that we do, even if we're doing things on our own or independently, are in relation to other people. If we decide to open a business and we're offering a product or a service or something, that's going to be dependent on other people buying into what it is that we're doing, right? If we're talking about this in terms of relating or relationships, yeah, this is about getting out there and being with people in an authentic kind of a way. Now, the card we have here, the advice card, or the comment card here, is the Success card. This is the 6 of Wands. And as you see, this is the person, there's this attitude of celebration here, like the parade type thing. And this person is riding the tiger, quite literally. When you talk about riding the tiger, it's the idea, tiger has become kind of a symbol for prosperity, right? The idea that when the tiger, I'm thinking of Ireland when they were talking about the Celtic tiger, when Ireland had that period where they just had this huge financial boom. Of course, that all fell apart, but they had this huge financial boom, and all of a sudden everybody was making tons of money and was worth tons of money. So yeah, so there's this idea of having success, like being in a moment where this flowering is going to lead to a prosperity. Okay, where there's going to be, you're going to lead to having success. So this is definitely, if you are coming into this, watching this live stream, or with the expectation of, okay, what's the reading say for today? There's definitely the idea that by not controlling the process and by following more your heart, or again, maybe feeling more about what you're giving to others or how you're reaching out to others, that this is going to lead to success for you. Okay, this is going to be something that is successful. If you have ideas right now that you want to manifest, this is a very good omen, or very good, it's very, very auspicious for being able to succeed. Of course, we always have to remember that success has to be maintained. So we may do something in the moment that's successful, but we also need to maintain it. And our outcome card is the Three of Pentacles, and which in this deck is the guidance card. Okay. So this definitely suggests the idea that now guidance can come, it depends on how we want to see it. Some people look at guidance as something that, that they have spirit guides. Okay, people look at that. I definitely see it that way. Some people say, well, if you're not seeing the separation between internal and external, then you may not think of those guides as something external. It's kind of like I was just saying about the Hindu gods. That you can view them as both internal and external, and they're kind of both and neither. So you can think of guides as something external to you, but people who say, well, I don't think of external guides, then really what you're talking about there is your own inner guidance. You're talking about your own inner voice, coming up and being able to, again, quieting the mind enough to be able to hear that inner voice and know what the right direction is for yourself. To hear that inner voice, though, of course, we need to not let the chatter of, but what about this and what about that? Planning always requires a certain amount of looking ahead and thinking about what the outcome might be, but we don't, you want to kind of be in the moment and focused on what you're doing in the moment. This is often, and we often forget that we're dealing with a journey. We're not dealing necessarily with a destination. Everybody a lot of times is very keen on trying to get to the end of something very fast. I'm going to do this thing, and I've done A, and now I'm expecting B. And it's like Alan Watts has said. Again, I'm gonna end up bringing him up every live stream, but that's only because I've been, for some reason, binge reading and watching. I'm actually gonna end up doing a class on Alan Watts because I've read so much Alan Watts over the years, and I think he's got some, especially in this time frame. He's a good. I think he is one of the philosophers, who's helpful to people, especially because he speaks in a way that's very, very easy for people to understand and relate to. He's not talking over people's heads, but he always talks about music or dance and the way in which the point of playing a piece of music is not to get to the end. He says otherwise, the best conductors would literally just write the finale, like the last chord, and that would be it. And okay, beginning, end, we're done. It's not a matter of racing to the end of it. The point of a dance is not to see who can dance the fastest and get to the end of the dance more quickly. It's the idea is that you are in the moment of what you're doing. And so that's kind of what this is. So with the guidance card, it's kind of like learning to figure out where you are in that moment. And of course, this is also a moment. Okay, we have our moments of success. We have this period of time where we have a window where success is very probable. But we need to pay attention to where we're being told to go. If something does not feel right to us about what we're doing, then we need to pay attention to that feeling and not just say, well, I don't care, it's not in my plan. You have to think about that. You have to allow that voice to be heard. I feel like drawing a rune today too. I do read the Norse runes as well. And oh wow. So our rune today is Dagaz, or Dagaz, however people like to say it. This is a rune of transformation. So this is literally the 180-degree turn rune. So I was talking about risk, and that this is a rune saying that life is about to take a 180-degree turn. What things were, you're not going to live. I think as it was put, you're not going to live the ordinary life in the ordinary way. This is a rune of certain things coming to an end, but things transforming into a kind of spectacular new beginning. So when I see Dagaz, I know that major change is coming whenever this comes up. I think of this as a very, very good rune to come up because it suggests that areas that have been stuck are going to become unstuck. That's the way I feel about it. And I think that that it's whatever this is, it's a transformation that's waited to happen. Whatever you've been frustrated, whatever you've been trying to control over here, this is something that is going to now, again, by listening to that guidance and by focusing more on the heart space rather than on your head and trying to figure out, what the outcome is going to be right now. I think you need to. It's gonna. There's definitely this sense here that you are going to. You're going to do more by yielding control than you are by trying to control the process here. But there's a process happening. I mean, if we're talking about our ocean metaphor again, there's this, there's a high tide coming in. And you're being carried with it. This is a very strong energy to me of things kind of changing, and it's not something that's in our control. So I think it's saying that to make the best of it, we have a lot of really good energy coming in with this Jupiter-Pluto aspect. But then we also have this idea that we are, this is the opportunity, if we want to ride that wave, to do something, to manifest something for ourselves and have the success that we want. But again, to understand that it's a process and that we just kind of need to follow our guidance along the way. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, or that it's helpful at the very least, what I've had to say. And one last quick note before I go is that I'm going to start offering some classes. Now, the subject material I'm going to start posting about this week, and I may talk about it in the live streams over the next few days, but I'm going to try to get something up on the Divine Feminine app this week, and I'm also going to put some stuff up on Transition Life Coaching. I may start offering certain courses that have to do with, maybe connected to meditation, might be connected to healing work, and they would be very inexpensive courses. I'm trying to do courses that are like, in the $20 range, like keep it very low. So that because again, my goal is more to have more people participate, rather than, I'd love to do it all for free, but at least very low cost, so that people are getting something and not, but not having to, because a lot of times people don't, especially in this economy, the way a lot of people have, I don't, maybe the economy is better, but a lot of people right now necessarily don't have they'll say, gee, I'd love to take your course, but I don't have all this money to shell out. So I'm trying to do something, trying to start somewhere with this, because I feel like my guides are telling me, like, you need to be getting out there and teaching a little bit. So I'm going to probably start offering something this week. So stay tuned for more about that. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate all of you. And I hope you have a very good morning, rest of your Sunday and weekend. And I will be back again tomorrow morning. As always, this recording is going to be available on Instagram, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube at some point today. So have a great rest of your day, and see you tomorrow, hopefully.